Alright guys, we finally made it to the 60th Objective-C tutorial, and in this tutorial we're going to be starting to work with files. Now in the last 59 tutorials, all we did is pretty much build programs right from here, ran them and they outputted stuff, maybe they calculated some things on the screen, but we never really actually created a new file or did anything really interesting to alter our computer system. So that's what we're going to be doing in this tutorial. And this is very crucial to all your programming from now on. And the thing is that it can get really confusing because there are a lot of very small subtleties that you need to watch out for. And also, there is a lot of information that we need to cover just to create one basic file. So, if you have to pay attention to any tutorial, make sure it's this one. So the first thing that we want to do is create a basic text file, and we want to do this manually so we have a file to work with later on, that we have one to copy around, change the name of it maybe. So here's what we want to do. In your Xcode toolbar at the top of the screen, go ahead and click File, New File. And what we want to do to create a basic text file is go ahead and click Other on the left hand side and click Empty File right here. Now empty file we can create a text file from. Go ahead and click Next and just name your new empty file anything you want. Tester file. Name it something that is pretty obvious that it's tester file. Now check this out. When we're working with a file path, and the file path is pretty much the location right here, we want to put this new text file in the same folder or directory that our program runs in. So if we're saying, alright, this is what we're running our program in, this is where we're creating everything. Not so fast. Xcode set up your program kind of weird, that it put where the program runs in a different folder. So this is one thing you have to watch out for. Go ahead and click Choose, and then in your build and in your debug, this is where your actual program runs from. You can see Bucky Test right there. So go ahead and click Choose, and now your tester file is in that build debug. It's in the same directory where your program is running from, and that's what we wanted. And we're saying, alright, why do we need it in the same directory? Well, technically you don't need it in the same directory, but it's really useful when you're trying to give your computer program, you need to tell it where the file is located. So instead of having to type out a whole long path, you can just type the file name and it will just look in that directory first. So check this out. They should be all in the same directory. Maybe your tester file may be up here, but anyways, now that we have a tester file, type in something like, my name is Bucky and I like ham. Now go ahead and file, save this at the top. And now that we have a saved text file with anything in it, it really doesn't matter what contents are in this as long as there's something in it. We can go back to our Bucky main program. Actually, just click on source, and now we can go ahead and learn what we want to learn. But before I even do that, check this out. In our Finder, make sure you go to your username. Mine's WhiteBlue1942. In your documents, Bucky Test, Build, Debug. Check this out. We have the tester file right here. Now go ahead and just move this to the side of the screen. Don't close it, because whenever we create files, we can see them popping up right in here, and it's pretty cool. So anyways, with all that, we can finally begin typing some code in our dumb program. So the first thing we want to do is we want to tell our computer program where that file is. So make a string object, ns string, and just name your object tester file. You can name your object anything you want, but if you name your object the same thing as your file name, which was tester file, then it's really obvious, like when you're working with your files, to see what object references what file. So now that we have pretty much the path of the file, and again, here's what I was talking about. We usually would have to give it a huge path like user WhiteBlue1942, and then that. But since it's in the same directory, we can just reference it from the same file name. So that's why I wanted to do that. It makes it a lot easier. So after we're done building the path, which is pretty much a string object, what we want to do is we need to build something called a file manager, and this is from the class NS File Manager. And you can name your file manager anything you want. I'm going to name my manager so it's really easy to see what it is. I like to name everything really obvious so I don't get confused. What a file manager does is it allows you to use the built-in methods that are made for working with files. I mean, just like any other object, pretty simple. So in order to actually create your manager, go ahead and put manager or wherever you named your object and set it equal to, again, not those, these, there we go, that's a little bit better, an NS file manager, and you want to call a method called default manager. And what this method is going to do is it's going to make a manager for you, a file manager, and it's going to store it in the object manager. So anyways, what we have now is pretty much this manager object, and with this manager object we can work with files, create files, copy files, rename files if we want. So with that being said, all I'm going to do in this tutorial is check this path right here and make sure that this file exists. So go ahead and do this. Make an if statement. If, and what I'm going to do is call a method called file exists at path using manager object. And remember, since we have access to the NS file manager class, there's a method in here called file exists at path. And all this does is it returns yes if it does exist and no if the file does not exist. So the path we want to use is actually this string right here. So go ahead and put tester file, and what it's going to do is this object is equal to the path. So when it asks for a path, we can just give it tester file and bam, check this out. Pretty simple. So go ahead and set this equal to no. So if the file doesn't exist, that means we have an error in our program. So what do we want to do if the file doesn't exist? NS, just log an error message on your screen, anything you want, like file does not exist, explanation point, and return 1. We're going to be making a bunch of error messages, and each error message is going to have a different return value. So then if it returns like 4, we know it's that error. So go ahead and just name this return 1 and build and run this and see if we got anything interesting. Perfect. It says program exited with status value 0. That's good. That is exactly what we wanted. Now check this out. If you had a thing called tester file, 34, this obviously is a file that doesn't exist. The only file that exists is tester file right there. So let's go ahead and run this, save, and see what would happen. File does not exist. So that's what we wanted. Our error message is working fine. So let's go ahead, change this back, run it again, make sure we get exited with status value 0, and we are good to go for the next tutorial. So this is how you can build a basic file manager. Whatever path you're working with pretty much means whatever file you want to check for, and check if that file exists. So pretty simple stuff. If just make sure you follow all those little things I told you, those little tips and tricks. And in the next tutorial, we're going to be doing actually some cool things that files besides just testing if it exists. So thank you guys for watching. I'm going to copy all the source code, put it in the forum, links below. So thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you later.